Well, good day. I'm glad to see that there's actually someone here. The last presentation on the last day, I like to think that perhaps they saved the best for last. And normally that would just be my jaded opinion, but turn to page 65 of the Mining Journal Pipeline, and maybe we'll see another opinion there as well. So this one is, all right. So we'll jump ahead in the interest of time with this, and certainly we are focused on becoming a globally significant producer of borates. And by doing this, the best part about this is there's been $60 million spent on this project before. While this is a new company, American Pacific was listed on the ASX in July of 2017. This project was fully permitted in the 90s, and certainly there's been $60 million spent on it, which allows us to move things forward fairly expediently. We do have a team of professionals in Apple Valley, California that are helping to move the project forward, as well as helping with financing. And we completed our DFS in December of 2018. Our DFS had rather strong financial metrics, $138 million in CapEx, and a return of over 40%. However, when you have a market cap of roughly $45 million, raising 138 we recognize would be difficult. So in February of this year, we came back through this project and worked on what we call our Phase 1A or starter project. Our full Phase 1 is 90,000 tons of boric acid plus 40,000 tons of SOP, and our starter project is 6,000 tons of boric acid plus 40,000 tons of SOP. This has a pathway to allow us $345 million worth of EBITDA, which is a rather strong project. And in addition to that, we also have an exploration project in Nevada, our Salt Wells project. Slide nobody really cares about, $250 million fully diluted shares by and large, and shows you where we're at today. So one of the challenges we run into is everybody says, well, that sounds really great, but what in the heck are borates? So borates, number one, follow along a lot of the thematics of lithium, but certainly the major uses of borates are for glass, fiberglass, and glazes on ceramics. The third most large use of borates is for the fertilizer industry. It is, however, interesting that you cannot build an electric vehicle without borates. There are borates in the ceramic or in the permanent magnets within the electric vehicles. There are borates in the airbags. There are borates in the windscreen of the vehicle. And of course, you use borates to clean up the vehicle as well through the detergents. They're used as well in energy conservancy with fiberglass. It's also in the permanent magnets associated with wind turbines and in solar PV modules. One of the other reasons that you largely have not heard about borates in the past is it is a duopoly. Roughly 4 million tons a year of borates, boric acid equivalent, are sold. 55% of that comes from Eti Maden, which is the state-owned Turkish industry. And certainly Turkey is an interesting place today. 25% of that market is also just up the road from us in beautiful Boron, California, which is owned by Rio Tinto. One of the interesting things to note as well is that, you're not going to get that, the slide on the bottom there shows what the production across Rio Tinto has been over the last 8 years. And over that period of time, you can see that that's fairly flat, which shows that the majority of the expansion is likely going to have to come from the Turks. 4 million tons equivalent growing at 3% to 5% a year. Our 90,000 tons at full Phase 1 production will be less than 6 months production, or 6 months growth, rather. Final reason you likely haven't heard about borates a whole lot is they only occur in very specific places in the world. You have to have volcanism. That volcanism means that you have volcanoes, and oftentimes there's stranded lakes there that also cause the borates to be created. There are basically two sides of mineralization across borates. One is a calcium borate, which is what we have, colemanite. That's mined by the Turks each and every day, so there's little risk associated with our project from a technical standpoint. And then the sodium borates, which are tincal or borax, and kernite, which is what they mine up the road from us in Boron, California. So you're probably asking yourself, why would these guys want to produce SOP? So SOP via the Mannheim process brings in straight potash, muriate of potash, adds sulfuric acid, adds heat, and produces high-value SOP, which we'll sell into the California markets. Again, as Hayden indicated, location, location, location. The Achilles heel to every Mannheim process is, what do you do with the HCl? Well, we have a nested use for that HCl. In the 2 to 4% of that HCl is added to 98 to 96% of our recycled water, and it goes into the formation and then comes out as a weak boric acid. It is upgraded through solvent extraction and crystallization and provides the boric acid. On the backside of the crystallizer, the weak liquor, then you add sulfuric acid to that, precipitate gypsum. Gypsum, again, is sold into the high-value California agricultural markets, and you regenerate HCl. So the Mannheim furnace on the front end of this basically removes risk from the project and acts as our acid plant. As part of the project, initially when we began drilling, we put in a number of boreholes and came up with a resource, roughly 14 million tons of boric acid equivalent. That's about evenly split between measured and indicated and inferred. And then as part of our DFS, we came back through to that. Respect came in and basically peer reviewed our project. And upon that peer review, they assigned us roughly a 5 million ton resource and, reserve. And that reserve is enough for the first 16 years of mining. Why are we able to inject? Well, a variety of reasons. First and foremost, our ore body is an ancient lake that is fault bounded. Those faults are confining faults which do not allow the lixiviant outside of it. It's also bounded top and bottom by silts and mudstones. Those silts and mudstones have permeabilities less than that of HDPE. Add to that, there's no aquifer within the region, and the ore body itself is alkali in nature, so any excess acid is consumed by the ore body. We've harvested our brine samples. For brines we created, we sent those to Hazen. Hazen upgraded that through solvent extraction and purified it. That was then sent to Swenson. Swenson has produced 99.9% plus pure boric acid. So again, off-the-shelf kit that removes technological risk from the project. Mannheim process, there's over 50 of those in the worldwide. So again, little technological risk associated with the project. Financial metrics, again, this $37 million on phase 1A provides you an EBITDA of roughly $27 million, pays for itself within 2 years. Then we advance through the project. Phase 1B is the full 90,000 tons plus 40,000 tons of SOP. Phase 2 is 270,000 tons of boric acid plus 80,000 tons of SOP. And finally, phase 3 itself is 450,000 tons of boric acid and 120,000 tons of SOP. And again, that provides you that pathway to 345 million EBITDA. Within the process, the things that we are currently working on, one of the major bits is to advance our permitting. We are currently permitted to produce 90,000 tons of boric acid with the County of San Bernardino and with the US BLM, the United States Bureau of Land Management. We have 2 major permits that we're working on at this point in time. The first one is a state permit. It's the Mojave Air Quality District permit. That permit previously existed but was rescinded by a previous owner in order to save money. And we are working to do that. We expect that before the end of the year. The other is a federal permit, and that federal permit is through the US EPA, and that is the Underground Injection Control Permit, which will allow us to inject within the ore body. One of the other things to note with this drawing right here is this is a mining project. This is not an infrastructure project. The I-40 interstate runs up across the top less than 2.5 miles from the facility. The BNSF Railroad runs less than 2.5 miles from the facility. Southern Cal Edison runs high-tension power lines through the facility. There's high-pressure nat gas that runs through there, and we are permitted for full phase 1, 90,000 tons, 100 gallons a minute worth of water, and we have found additional water within the site. So many options available to us for financing. Of course, if we could get some love from the market, our first choice would likely be equity. Of course, at this point, it's probably a little dilutive, so we're currently speaking with folks about debt and potentially debt with some equity upside. We also have potentials for strategic agreements with the likes of Compass, Nutrien, Mosaic. And then, of course, we have some agreements which we'll talk about in just a couple moments with the Chinese. One of the biggest things is this is a fertilizer play. Again, the third most large use for borates is associated with fertilization. Add to that SOP in the high-value California markets. Add to that the gypsum, which is added as a soil amendment for the sodic soils associated with California, and we truly become a fertilization play. Boron is the second most applied micronutrient by value, and you can see that the boron value is increasing by over 9% compounded annual growth rate. We have strategic agreements with two Chinese majors, Sinochem and Sinomac. Sinochem and Sinomac are Fortune or Global 500 companies, which are larger than Rio Tinto and larger than BHP. To have a company our size, to have two of those agreements tells us there's something interesting happening in borates. Our project schedule, as I indicated, we're looking at permits by the end of the year. We're currently working with Mill Creek Engineering to advance our engineering and our financing, again, looking at the end of the year. And with that in mind, we would then begin construction at the end of this year, beginning of next, 12-month build cycle, which puts us in production late 2020, early 2021. And then the other projects tag along after that. Value, again, much of this we've already spoke about. Geopolitical, we can argue about California back and forth, but certainly I don't find it too bad of a place to work. Markets, strong markets growing at 3 to 5% a year. It's not an infrastructure project, but it is absolutely a mining project. Long life reserve. One of the other things we will look to do as we move the project forward is list on the U.S. markets. U.S. markets don't like development stage projects. However, once we list on the U.S. markets, we're putting ourselves in similar categories to Mosaics, Compass, Nutrien, those type folks. Those folks trade at 8 to 12 times EV to EBITDA multipliers. And I remind you, at full value, we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $345 million in EBITDA. We do have an upside potential with our exploration target. Our exploration target is salt wells, and historically there has been a level of production at salt wells, and they produce borates off of that, and it's consistent with our goal to become a globally significant producer of borates. We've collected MT data from that already this year, or last year. This year we will look to complete the drilling process on that and put in a few drill holes and evaluate our exploration target. And thank you very much for your time.